Good morning and welcome to the original Loretta Brown Show. Wah! Yep, radio to open the heart, heal the soul, and awaken the consciousness, which, you know, every time I say that, Benny, I'm wondering, what is the consciousness? You know?
It's being original, that's for sure.
Oh, that's right.
You and your conscious.
And it should be the original Loretta Brown Show, produced by the original Benny Mathers.
Please stop.
That's right.
Ah.
I always have to give you a plug because I so appreciate what you do, and I really mean it.
Oh,
yeah.
You're quite welcome.
Yep, you make me shine. That's what it is. Anyway, I am the owner of Reiki Oasis, located right here in the greater Seattle area. In fact, we are on the east side called Bellevue. Beautiful view, that's right. And Reiki Oasis is somewhere between the 22nd and 23rd year in business. We offer all kinds of things over there. Of course, lovely, gentle, traditional Japanese Reiki. And we also have a lot of classes that are designed to help you live life in a different way. Let's put it like that. So you can find out more about Reiki Oasis at ReikiOasis.com. You can sign up for classes at schedule.ReikiOasis.com or for appointments. And feel free to sign up for the free newsletter. It's one of the ways that you do get notices of classes and new things coming up. I do have a Reiki Masterclass coming up the first weekend in November. And like I say to everybody, you have many, many choices for teachers for all kinds of things. And you know, it's important that you connect with your teacher, that there is, I'm going to say, a meeting of the vibrational essence. So check it out. I do teach Reiki a little bit different than other people, and I bring in a whole lot of self-introspection and everything that we do, and we do meditations and things like that. So check it out. I have a crystal bowl healing concert coming up in the middle of November, and you can get tickets for that at BaliYoga.com. We are listener supported. I would like to thank all of the listeners for your help at patreon.com/The Loretta Brown Show, because that means we can bring in all kinds of amazing people. And I would be remiss, Mr. Benny, if I did not put a big shout out for the Alternative Talk 1150 listener survey. That's right.
I appreciate this.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
That's
Continue,
right.
please.
That's
Enlighten
right.
our listeners why we must do this.
Because we listen to you.
Okay. There's that. Yeah,
there
there's
is that.
Okay.
Occasionally, we stop talking occasionally, and we put...
Actually, we can't. I'm not a fan of dead air, so
Okay,
we'll keep going.
Yeah.
Right,
Actually,
right.
I have trouble with that myself. So if you want to go to 1150kknw.com and click on the words 2017 Listener Survey near the top of the page, it is a great chance to let station management know about your favorite shows, your likes, your dislikes, and what you want to hear on the station. And I have to tell you, we do love this feedback. And so just take a moment and do it.
Yeah, it helps us better craft the programming for you, the listener out there, on what we want to give you. And again, it's not a popularity contest. It may be for some, might not be for others. We're not here all about that. We, again, want to just drive something a little bit better for your ear to listen to.
That's right. That's right. So when you go to that 1150kknw.com and you click on that 2017 listener survey,
Yep.
It will direct you through
A few little questions and answers, a little fill in the blank,
Yeah.
Pretty simple,
Pretty
you know.
simple.
Yeah, pretty simple stuff.
That's right.
And, by doing so, you're actually entering yourself, you forgot the best part, you're entering yourself into a drawing for $200 to the Melting Pot in Bellevue. Or any other location, I believe. So, I know it's pretty, well, they're a chain.
Oh,
So
yeah. So any place the Melting Pot is.
So $200 worth of, like, melted cheese and chocolate. You can't go wrong with that. I mean, hello. It's fondue at an extreme.
That's right.
Yes.
It's good.
It's amazing stuff. So by doing that, 1150kknw.com, you're entering yourself into that. And the winner gets, the gift certificates. And there you go.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And be sure to like the original Loretta Brown Show. Thanks so much for doing that. Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's hard to believe we are more than halfway through October. In fact, we're almost to the end of October. And going into November of 2017, and 2018 will be here before we know it. So for those of you that were celebrating Diwali, happy Diwali to you. I hope you had a wonderful time with the 5-day Festival of Light. And of course, as I mentioned last week, this is a time to celebrate and honor the victory of light over darkness, knowledge over ignorance, good over evil, and hope over despair. And I hope you've all been lighting your candles, and when you do so, realize that you're connecting with your own beautiful light on the inside of yourself. While the days are here in Seattle are getting shorter and darker, there is always that opportunity to find the illumination. We also have very interesting energy this week in the sky, and as I am a sky gazer, I believe we're greater than the stars, but I love looking at the stars. And we had the Sun and Jupiter meeting in the sky in one of the luckiest days of the year this week. So it's happening in the sign of Scorpio, and it says something to our ability to create something more loving and more wonderful. And I'm always encouraging people to do that. Astrologically, this week we welcome the Sun in Scorpio. And the Sun in Scorpio runs from October 23rd through November 21st. The guiding principle of Scorpio is I desire. Scorpio is the sign of depth, intimacy, and extremes of feeling. So you may have been feeling some of that. And I know my Scorpio friends, I've seen a few of you. You're also being affected by Jupiter in Scorpio. So superficiality simply does not work with the Sun in Scorpio. We will have the desire to get to the bottom of matters. Mediocrity does not satisfy it either, and all that is hidden, taboo, secret, or suppressed may interest us at this time. And in Libra, we strive towards equality and fairness, but Scorpio instinctively believes that life simply may not be fair. So Scorpio's energy is a little bit provocative, sometimes in a quiet way as well as passionate. It can be strong-willed and intense, and it can be an immensely healing and transformative energy. Jealousy, vindictiveness, beating a dead horse, and manipulation are some of the negative expressions of Scorpio. So I hope you are using this energy to move forward into transforming something about yourself. I can't actually think of a better astrological segue into my guest today. And my guest is Dr. Kavitha M. Chinnaiyan, MD. She's an integrative cardiologist at Beaumont Health Systems and associate professor of medicine at Oakland University William Beaumont School of Medicine in Rochester, Michigan. Dr. Chinnaiyan became drawn to what's called the direct path through the teachings of various teachers, to include Greg Good, Sri Atmananda Krishna Menon, and to Tantra through the influences of Sri Premananda, Sally Kempton, and Swami Lakshmanju. She blends her expertise in cardiology with her knowledge of yoga, Tantra, and the direct path in her program for patients to discover, I love this, the end of suffering. We will be talking about her new book, Shakti Rising, Embracing Shadow and Light on the Goddess Path to Wholeness. And in this book, she discusses the 10 forms of Shakti known as the Mahavidyas. These great goddesses become the focal points for self-inquiry that will help you heal and embrace all aspects of yourself back into wholeness. Sounds beautiful. Welcome to the show, Kavitha.
Thank you, Loretta. Thanks so much for having me here.
It's really a delight, and it's wonderful. I have your book here, and I've been reading parts of it and looking through it, and it is it's a beautiful book. It's well written, and it also brings up a lot of things that, you know, for the listeners, I sometimes think they have to have a little bit of introduction into certain vocabularies, such as non-duality, Tantra, you know, these sorts of things. Ayurveda, right? And so can Can you speak a little bit about your spiritual journey and what led you to writing this book? And I know that's a big question.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting story, but I think it's interesting because a lot of us can relate to to my story, because it isn't really that unique. It is the stuff of being human, with that common thread that binds us all together, and we all have similarities and commonalities in our story. And so what happened with me was I was very competitive, very ambitious, very driven, and that has really led my journey on this earth, of being very driven and wanting to succeed and wanting to achieve X, Y, or Z, whatever it may be, of always wanting to be somewhere. And so it was almost like, you achieve one thing. Okay, I get into medical school, and then, of course, there is the next goal. Okay, now I have to do really well, so I get into the best residency program or a residency program. And there I have to prove myself so that I can get into a cardiology program. And then I get into a cardiology program, and then I have to prove myself to do something else. So it's a I know you're laughing because you're familiar with this.
Yes.
Yeah.
The never-ending, yeah. Searching for the next thing or the fulfillment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like a never-ending, never-ending journey on this path of seeking. And along with all of these, desires, there is the pressure, right? That we grow up thinking we must get married. And then once you get married, you must have children. And once you have children, you have to be the best kind of parent that you can be. I mean, the kinds of pressures we humans, particularly women, put on ourselves, Mm-hmm. And so I was just like that, like pretty much a lot of women I know. And so what happened was I didn't have another frame of reference because everybody else around me was doing the same thing and constantly on the go and on this path of seeking. And so my children were very young. My youngest was about a year old. This was more than 10, 12 years ago. And I was kind of back into that grind. So, when you have a child, there is this sense of contentment. And anybody who's had a child can attest to this. It doesn't last because then you start worrying about your child's future. And then you are seeking on their behalf. So it's like a never-ending thing, And so at one point, I kind of had to pause and say, okay, what is going on with me? What am I seeking really? When will this end? So, and then, the more I reflected on this, I was blessed because I had this vision one morning of my future self, of this middle-aged, worn-out woman who had everything that, would conventionally define success, but was deeply unhappy. And then it stuck me, that image stuck with me. And I have this huge realization that, wait, what I'm actually seeking is the end of seeking, which is really what all of us are seeking. Because we're always seeking the one thing with which we will be happy forever. And we never get that. Because as soon as you get one thing that we, as soon as we achieve one thing that we have been chasing, there is a momentary stillness, and then it starts up again. Right? And
yes.
So, but in that stillness, we realized that, okay, this is what we were seeking, this sense of completion. But that sense of completion is actually an illusion because the fundamental problem with us as humans is this sense of being incomplete or having a sense of lack, which is what drives all of our seeking. Whether we are seeking academic success or we are seeking wealth or we are seeking peace, or we are seeking something else on the spiritual path. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, we're all seeking that one thing, that end of seeking. So that really began my really the spiritual journey, but in a very deeply earnest way. I say that because I had always been on a spiritual journey, even through my childhood. But it was kind of what I was doing was to really support my seeking rather than going deep into it and seeing, okay, what is going on here. Mm-hmm. So that the earnest journey began with realizing that is never going to happen. And so let me figure out if what I'm seeking outside isn't working, then I'm looking in the wrong direction. So I need to look and see why I feel incomplete. And so that is how this whole journey began, and went on this circuitous path of various teachers and teachings, and the culmination of which is this book.
I'm following what you're saying so clearly because it sounds kind of like my own journey at some level, and I know the listeners can relate, but we do spend so much time looking here and looking there, seeking this, seeking that. Maybe this will be the answer. Maybe nope, maybe it'll be that. Or now that I have this, I want that, right?
Absolutely. And if it's not one thing, or if it's not this, okay, maybe this relationship, this is going to be it, right? Right. Yeah, and I so often have people come and they'll say, like in love relationships, Loretta, is this the one? And I'm thinking, that's more than a yes or no answer. Maybe we should examine the concept of the one, right? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
So we are, I was thinking of a quote while you were talking too. I don't know who said it. Our greatest fear is that we will never have our greatest desire. Something like that. Uh-huh.
Yes, exactly. And that basically sums it up. That fear is driven by the sense of being incomplete, of always lacking. And that's such a learned behavior. We learn that. We aren't born like that. If we start learning it, as soon as we start separating ourselves from the world, just in very early childhood, 18 months to 2 years, when we start learning that this me has a name, and this is separate from that, which doesn't have my name, and so that sense of separation begins, and with that starts this whole, journey that is driven by the separateness, which is always in comparison to others.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Uh-huh.
Oh, no, please.
I was thinking while you were talking about, me versus I, and how we often say things like, I will tell you about me, right?
Yeah.
Realizing that I, whatever that is, may decide what it's going to tell you about me.
Exactly.
Which is really fun to contemplate.
Exactly.
I think it makes my eyes go cross-eyed, but it's the truth. So there's sort of this idea that the I self versus the self. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the I self is, the way I describe it in the book, is really this persona that is created from learning about ourselves through our senses, and our culture and our family and our peers and the political situation. So if I went up to somebody and said, "Who are you?" they would give me a story about where they were born, what their name is, their culture, their beliefs, their likes and their dislikes, and so on and so forth. We create this persona as we go about our lives, which is based on past stories and future aspirations. So I define myself based on whatever has happened in the past and who I aspire to be. You see, both of these situations are based in linear time. The past, which is gone, doesn't exist, and the future, which doesn't exist either. But you see, that really binds us. Linear time is where we kind of live because it feels so real. You know, this persona that we've created is who we think we are, which is the combination of the body and the mind. You know, the mind is the one that decides, chooses, makes, likes and dislikes, and I like so-and-so, I don't like so-and-so, I like this, I don't like this. All of these things that we have kind of gathered through learning from others and learning about our own situations through our own circumstances. So when I say others, it's not necessarily people, but even our own circumstances. We have learned from outside in who we are. So that is the I self, that persona, that identity with the body-mind. But in reality, and this is actually very freeing, is if I said to you, there has been something in you that has never changed. Can you find that? What is that has never changed? You've grown up, your body has changed in different ways. You've gathered all kinds of life experiences. You have moved from place to place, whatever your story may be. But there is one thing that hasn't changed. And if we reflect and contemplate and inquire into that, and we kind of take away everything that has changed, right? Okay, I'm not the body, so that's not it. Because in reality, this body that's sitting here and talking to you is completely different. If you look at it biologically, it's completely different. All the cells have turned over in the last, 60 to 90 days. So I can't even say that this body has been the same in the last, 3 months, because everything has changed. The cells have all changed. They've all turned over, right? So it isn't that. So it isn't that. It isn't my mind, which is constantly changing. If you take away everything that has changed, what remains? And so that sense of being, so that I am, the I am that is prior to thought, which is not I am so and so, but just simply the sense of being alive, of just being. And so that is the self with the capital F. So that is the difference between the self, which is eternal, unborn, undying, unchanged, never touched by all our changing circumstances, versus the I self, which is a conglomeration of who we think we are, of things that make up our persona. And so all of our suffering comes from becoming identified with our persona. Because we are always trying to validate, justify, and keep that persona alive. Right?
Yes.
And it does, and that's all we do. Like whatever we do in our life, that's what we're doing. We're trying to keep that persona strong and healthy.
Well, and in our own way, we're trying to support our story and keep our story going. I'm, never quite sure where that begins and where that ends. In your book, Shakti Rising, and for those of you listening, my guest today is Dr. Kavitha Chinnaiyan, and she has a great book, Shakti Rising, Embracing Shadow and Light on the Goddess Path to Wholeness. But you have a meditation in your book called The Heart Opener, which I think goes right along with what you're talking about, like how to navigate this I self into the self, maybe?
Yes. Exactly. Yes. That heart opener is actually a meditation that I learned from my teacher, Greg Good, and it's really very powerful because what it's asking us to do is to take a stand as who we really are, which is the self, and say, wait, just drop into your sense of awareness, which is this global sense of being aware. And simply notice that everything comes and goes, but you remain as the sense of awareness. So the more we do that practice, the more we kind of start realizing, hey, wait, I'm not this person that I've been taking myself to be.
Yeah, I want to share with you and with the listeners. I have just got the book, and so I've been reading through it. And I did your pause between breaths meditation and also the heart opener meditation.
Yeah.
And I just want you to know that there's something in that begins to change you already. And I found myself even driving to the radio station this morning, kind of looking at traffic and the children getting on the bus and everything in a different way. And we're going to take a break in a moment, and then we'll be back. But it's kind of maybe a little bit of just a cliffhanger. I actually, I drove straight here. I didn't hit one red light. Nobody in front of me got in the way. And my big joke is that I have to drive past the Mormon temple, and the Angel Moroni lit up like in gold. I went, oh, wow. Okay, so I'm definitely going to be working through that some more. But anyway, this is Loretta Brown. This is the original Loretta Brown Show. We're going to take a break. My guest today is Dr. Kavitha Chinnaiyan, and we will be right back talking more about Shakti rising. I just love saying Shakti. Welcome back to the original Loretta Brown Show. I am the owner of Reiki Oasis, located here in Greater Seattle area. We do have, I do have clients all over the world, to tell you the truth, because I do a lot more than Reiki. You can find out more about me at thelorettabrownshow.com or ReikiOasis.com or the 1150 AM KKNW, the original Loretta Brown Show. My guest today is Dr. Kavitha Chinnaiyan. She is the author of Shakti Rising, Embracing Shadow and Light on the Goddess Path to Wholeness. And if you haven't already gone to try to get this book, get online and find it now, especially if you are on a path of wellness and wholeness. And, of course, we're going to get into the conversation with my question is, who or what is Shakti, Kavitha?
Yeah, such a great question. So Shakti in Sanskrit literally means power. And that is the literal translation of the word, power. So, this book, Shakti Rising, is written from the perspective of Tantra. And now Tantra is a spiritual path, which is a little bit different than yoga, in that in Tantra, we actually use our limitations, our own pain and fears as the doorway to joy and peace and wholeness. So there is in Tantra, we don't prefer a state of mind or something else to what is currently happening in our experience. So whatever is happening in our experience, we use that as the gateway to the divine. So in Tantra, there are two fundamental aspects. Shiva is one and Shakti is the other. So Shiva is this attributeless, as in without any attributes, without any properties. He is the masculine principle of awareness. And Shakti gives him his attributes. So everything that we can assign to the divine to be his power, his quality, his attribute, his ability to do things is really Shakti. So she is his power. So Shiva and Shakti together are the divine, in Tantra. So they are always referred to as the divine in totality, as in for them to be together. So Shakti then is the divine feminine, and she's accessible to us because everything we see in manifestation, in creation, whether it's cosmic forces such as time, space, or the earthquakes and tsunamis and whatever else we may want to see in nature, or things within ourselves, our aspirations, our desires, our shadows, our darkness, our anger, our jealousy, and our microaggressions or aggressions. All of it is Shakti. There is nothing that isn't her. So she is the basis of creation, outside as well as within ourselves. She is the one that creates also this persona that I was speaking about earlier, the one that limits us.
Mm.
So the Mahavidyas are 10 specific forms of Shakti in one particular tantric path, where each Mahavidya, each goddess, holds in her both the darkness, where it creates this limitation and identification with this persona, and she also holds in herself, the light, which is to become free of that and see that who we are is limitless, undying, unborn, eternal self. So she has in her both of the shadow as well as light. So we use those shadows of each of these Mahavidyas to work through our particular corresponding issues so that we can open to the light and see that all of it arises from falsely identifying as the persona.
That is powerful. So I'm going to go back and bring out a few of those points. The Shiva and Shakti. A lot of people talk about Shiva. In many different ways, and sometimes for us Westerners, trying to approach these Eastern concepts can confuse us a little bit. And and some of that, like I like how you describe that, because people will say, well, Shiva's the masculine and Shakti's the feminine. And I think part of our difficulties is that we don't really even know what that means.
Exactly. Yes.
Like, are we talking, patriarchy masculine? Like a lot of people kind of resist that or whatnot. And so these ideas that by working with the Mahavidyas, these 10 goddesses that are clearly outlined in your book with wonderful exercises, that we can begin to heal ourselves. And I also heard you say in there something about our darkness, our shadows. Like, most people don't want to go there. So can you talk about that just a little bit? Like, for instance, the pictures of these Mahavidyas are a little bit frightening to some of us. Like Kali, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. They are fierce. So the one thing that binds all of the Mahavidyas together or the one quality that they all have in common is this fierceness. And there is a reason for that. One is to really shatter all misconceptions we may have about what feminine really means. Mm. And this is my interpretation of the imagery, because we have been steeped in patriarchy long enough to where we start assigning all kinds of qualities to the divine feminine that we think is the ideal woman, but that has been really passed on through centuries of what we have been told we must be. Mm-hmm. So these images shatter those misconceptions. But also most importantly, they do a very radical thing, which is through their fierce imagery, they actually show us that the divine isn't limited to what we think are good qualities, to just the light, that nothing escapes the divine. everything, when we say everything is in creation is the divine, it means, the mother-in-law you may not get along with, those people that you think are, or we know are doing bad things to other people, the terrible, terrible natural disasters that are happening around the world, the leaders and politicians we may disagree with, they too are manifestations of the divine. And so you see, nothing escapes the divine. As in, when we say that, this imagery actually helps us see that. Because sometimes it can remain as a very fuzzy concept. Yeah, everything is good, everything is the divine, and we kind of don't really understand what that means and what implications this has in our day-to-day life. But the Mahavidyas show you that that is the case. That indeed nothing is outside of Shiva and Shakti. That we are all part of that we are all manifestations of the divine, regardless of whether we think somebody else should or shouldn't be. Because we may agree with them or not agree with them. That's irrelevant to the divine.
Well, and then and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
It also brings up this issue of, the I self, again, the persona versus the self, and judgment, my storyline. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, and it's important that you bring that up, judgment, because like Kali is the first of the Mahavidyas, and she represents time. So the unique thing about these Mahavidyas is each of them represents a macrocosmic force, that set creation in motion. So Kali, for instance, with the beginning of her dance, creation begins as time. So without her dance, there can be no time. And it is her dance that creates this illusion of linear time, And so you see her holding, she's in the cemetery with all these corpses thrown around her. And so when we start really contemplating on that imagery, we see that we too are living amidst corpses of our stories, our past hurts and slights, and we carry those grudges, and we carry those, the sense that somehow we are that. Our story is made up of all of those memories of the past, which doesn't really exist right now. And so, her light, and her darkness, or the shadow aspect of Kali, is aggression and violence, and you see that in her imagery, right? It's an extremely violent imagery. But when you really contemplate on that, what is the light aspect of that? What is she showing us in that imagery? And it's nonviolence, believe it or not, because nonviolence comes by stepping out of linear time into the eternal now. Because as long as we are entrenched in our story of the past and the future, we will continue to have these microaggressions of comparison and judgment. We will always compare the I self, my I self, and judge it versus everybody else. And all of that lies in the storyline of the past and the future and the present. So she gives us a way to wake up outside of this linear time. And it's when we wake up to that eternal now, in which all of this linear time stuff is going on as dream-like things, then we realize that we are whole, we are complete. And so is everybody else. So in that, we kind of become, not kind of, but actually we become nonviolent, because we lose the ability to compare ourselves with others when we step out of the story of the I self.
To help bring it to a little bit more tangible concepts, you have a great meditation in the book about a rose.
Yeah.
And can you just briefly mention that? Because I think it will help people follow what you're saying in a more tangible way.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. So, this inquiry that about the rose is actually to see that memory is a thought occurring now. So, for instance, the way we do this practice is we sit down and we always start with the heart opener because that is the basis of all the inquiry. It facilitates inquiry. So we first do the heart opener and then we think about a rose. We try to remember a rose in all its vividness with the color, the smell, the touch of it, the feel of it. And then we inquire and see, is there really a rose here? What is this thought of a rose arising as right now? This memory of an object, what does it arise as right now? And we see, the more we do this and delve deeply into it, we see that memory or the thought or of an object, a person, or a place right now arises merely as a thought. And so when we see that in clarity, that there isn't such a thing as, really memory, except as a thought which occurs now, we become free of it. Mm-hmm. It loses its binding power. So, and then once you do that with a neutral object, you can go back and do that with, happy memories first and say, well, my memory of my happy childhood incident is occurring as a thought now. And it doesn't have any power over me because thoughts come and go and I'm here. And so once we become comfortable with that, then we can work with our traumas and our past hurts and say, where is it now? Where is it now? And I'll just tell you as a doctor that if I dissected your brain, I won't find any memories. If I dissected your heart or your liver, I won't find any memories there either.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really exist anywhere except as a thought.
Are you at talking about, because like I said earlier in the interview, you have the language, you say non-dual inquiry,
Yes.
And is this what you're talking about now? Like,
Yes.
What is non-duality?
Yeah, such a great question. So non-duality, in order to understand non-duality, we must first define duality. Duality means two, duo, right? Two. Which means, so like I was saying earlier, we are not born with the sense of the I self. It happens through learning and by being told, hey, you are Mary, or you're John, or you're Kavitha, whatever. We are told that, hey, that's you. And that's when, actually, if you observe children's behavior, that's when it's at that age where they find out who they are, that the terrible twos begin. Because that's when, they start saying, this is mine. Whereas before, they didn't have that idea that there is a mine versus not mine. So duality refers to opposites. Me versus not me, us versus not us, black and white, good and bad, beautiful and ugly. You see, everything that we base our identity on, the I self, is based in duality. So non-duality means not separate. Not separate from our experience, not separate from the world, not separate from anything. So non-duality is the experience of the self, whereas duality is the experience of the I self.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so in your book, I understand you're mixing non-dual inquiry with Tantra.
Yes.
Which is unique to you, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, I mean, Tantra is actually a non-dual path.
Yeah.
And there are many different forms of Tantra, and Kashmir Shaivism is a very well-known non-dual path of Tantra, and there are many others. So in reality, even the path of the goddess is one of non-duality, because when we realize that all in creation is her, including me, where is the duality? It disappears. She is everything, including me, including you, including everything arising in our experience is her. So she becomes the non-dual, which is me. I become one with her. So, so non-duality is actually the basis also of Advaita Vedanta. And it is also the goal of yoga. So it is the goal of many different paths. And in this book, I've tried to combine the paths, taking one practice from one particular tradition and another practice from the direct path, which is the non-dual path.
And that brings up one of my questions. What is the difference between progressive paths and the direct path? What does that mean?
That is a fabulous question, and the difference is, okay, so in progressive paths, we start with the idea or with the concept that who we are is this I self. And that someday we're going to realize that this is not who we are. Someday we will realize that we are the self. So the path then is one of progression, where we slowly work on ourselves, in whatever way, to purify ourselves, or to do this, or to work with our bodies, to work with our breath, or to work with mantra. Depending on the path, we progress along a certain timeline to where there is this prize or this goal of realizing that who we are has never been the I self, this persona. So it's a progression.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The direct path, on the other hand, begins with the understanding that who we are is the self. So we take a stand as that right off the bat and say, I'm going to stand as a self, and this is not a pretend, make it till, fake it till you make it. It's not that kind of thing. It's truly who we are. So we're going to take a stand as that and then examine all of the stuff that happens in our experience, how we experience the world, how we see, touch, smell, hear, taste, how we interact with others, how we view ourselves and our mind states and our thoughts and emotions. We're going to examine all of this by taking a stand as the self. So that is the direct path. Direct as in we take a stand right off the bat. There is no progression along a path to where we are going to realize that, but we are going to take a stand immediately as this and then examine the world from this standpoint. So the vantage point is different. In the progressive path, we take a stand as the I self. In the direct path, we take a stand as the self.
Is either one of those paths shorter or faster or better?
I'm so glad you asked.
Evaluation question.
Oh no! This is actually, I would say, one of the most important questions. So the direct path isn't shorter. It isn't better. There is no path that is better than another. It all depends on what each of us is inclined towards, So in the direct path, although we take a stand as a self, the path is equally or perhaps longer, because just because we take a stand as a self doesn't mean we become free of, all the binding forces of the I self. You see, because our personas, this I self, is a very tenuous concept. It isn't easy to let go of that. Because it comes with very deep conditioning, things that we have accumulated over lifetimes even. So it isn't so easy to say, okay, starting today, I'm going to take a stand as a self and that's that. It doesn't work like that. because we are constantly pulled into our tendencies and our limitations and that pull towards being this body mind, of being this person. So it takes a very long time to actually keep inquiring, and to take a stand more and more firmly as the self. So one path isn't better than the other. It's just two different paths. And a lot of times, people who come to the direct path have worked in progressive paths for many, many years, because even to take a stand as a self, it takes a little bit of discernment and a little bit of prior practice, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get it. We are down to, believe it or not, the last 2 to 3 minutes. And I want to, I'm going to end with a huge question. A lot of people do not understand Tantra, Kundalini, sexual energy, that sort of a thing. How can sexuality be used for awakening? And like I said, in about 2 minutes, do the impossible with that question.
Well, I've covered that in the book. And I would say that sexual energy, that primal energy, is really our friend. We can work with that on this path because it's so powerful that all it needs is directing it, in particular ways where it starts. Actually, it is that energy. Sexual energy is really the most powerful part of the Kundalini energy. And that is the one that dissolves all our limitations. So that also is a form of Shakti, actually. And so it works. All it needs is a little bit of direction, a little bit of practice, and it starts working on our limitations and our shadows.
I love that, and it brings me right back to the 10 Mahavidyas. And very quickly, there's 10 of them. How do we know which one to work with, or do we work our way through them?
Yeah. So, my advice is always to kind of read through the book. Don't do any of the practices. Just read through, especially the descriptions of each of the goddesses, which is just a page or so, and see which one kind of appeals to you from the imagery and from the description, and start working with that. But if none of them is really calling on and saying, okay, work with me first, start at the beginning. Start with Kali and work your way through, which is really how I work through it.
Yeah. Well, this is Loretta Brown. My guest today has been Dr. Kavitha Chinnaiyan. She is the author of Shakti Rising, Embracing Shadow and Light on the Goddess Path to Wholeness. I think this book is timely. We so need it right now. I hope you will go check it out. And Kavitha, what is your web address, your website?
It's Kavitha MD, KavithaMD.com.
Good. KavithaMD.com. Go find out more about her, connect with her, and be good to each other. This is Loretta. Talk to you next time.